Thank you, Mr. Hollowbone. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. It's the first time for me, and you are, Mr. Hollowbone is a near neighbour of mine in constituency terms, and used to represent a huge chunk of my constituency. So I know I don't do as good a job as you did as a constituency member of Parliament, so I hope I can at least be good and behave myself in front of you as chairman of this. And it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, as it was to serve under Sir Rogers. And I've learnt many things during the course of this debate. The first thing I learnt is never to drink a litre of water in the course of a 3-hour debate. But that's by the by. What I would like to, what I did learn is actually it's that the power of a petition, because we've had a very, very good and actually I thought on the whole a constructive debate here today. And I do commend Kieran O'Doherty, the lead petitioner, because it's a big step to do this sort of thing and to get the publicity that has gone with it. And I think he should be congratulated on in many areas, because actually he, without any massive publicity or whatever, has got a petition that has breached the 100,000 mark. Whereas if you look at, and I'm in favour of the said petition I'm just about to mention, Sky are trying to get a petition about leaders' debates, which they advertise on a regular basis on their news broadcast, which sits at 70,000 now. So I think Kieran O'Doherty should be very much congratulated for getting the number of names on his petition that he did do. And I congratulate the Petitions Committee on arranging this debate and the Honourable Member for Blaydon for sponsoring it. And I've enjoyed listening to many of the contributions. I thank the Honourable Lady especially for the way the polite and sensitive way in which she introduced the debate. I will talk about many of the questions that she did raise, especially around no deal, or maybe as correctly it should be saying leaving the, as other people call it, leaving the EU on WTO terms, or as one of my colleagues would say, a global British leave, or whatever it might be. But I just thought I should stay at the very beginning that no one is talking about introducing a hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland. We will not. The Irish Taoiseach has said again today that they will not. That is not on the table. And I will pick up the points that she very properly mentioned about the concerns of EU citizens in the event of leaving on WTO terms. As the Prime Minister said, these people are our friends, our neighbours, our co-workers, and EU citizens living lawfully in the United Kingdom today will be entitled to stay, and we welcome to stay. I thank my honourable friend, the member for Morley and Outward, for her contribution. I mean, as ever, she hid her views under a bushel. I just really would wish you'd tell people where the Honourable Lady stands on issues. She strongly represents the people that voted for her in her constituency when she won it at the general election, and her constituency's views on these matters as ever. And her point, and it's a very, very fair one, echoed by a number of other speakers about trust in politics, was a particularly well-made one. I listened to what the Honourable Lady for Hampstead and Kilburn had to say about EU citizens' rights, and I do think there's a careful balance to be had here, because there have been a whole host of assurances by senior politicians, actually I think on both sides of the House, that EU citizens would be always, EU citizens resident in the United Kingdom currently and working in the United Kingdom currently, would be welcome to stay here under a no deal. The Prime Minister has already pledged that under a deal. I think she might have been slightly confused, if I may be so bold, as to the section of the withdrawal agreement that she read out. That was actually in a deal, and that was a reciprocal way that both the European Union and we will be dealing with EU citizens living in the United Kingdom and UK citizens living in the EU. But I'll happily write to her or have a chat with her afterwards just to clarify that. But I just want to say to her that, Charette is more than welcome to, of course.
Even if it's an agreement that we've reached, does the Minister still think it's right that this is the way forward, where if you've been out of the country for 5 years, I understand it, for any reason, then your status is not settled?
I think you'll find that's common in international law across the globe. And yes, I do think that is correct. But Surette is more, I can only hold in admiration Surette, her medic constituent, who does 200 surgeries every year, and thank him for what he does, and say you are more than welcome to stay. We welcome you with open arms. Thank you for being here in the first place. And to Georgia, I really wish I wish her well in finding a job. And so I hope I've made the point about how we will deal with EU citizens. The Honourable Member for Carshalton and Wallington, it's always a pleasure to listen to him talk. He will remember that there was a day in the last general election at the very beginning of the campaign where he and I were actually canvassing on the same street in his constituency, a constituency I know very well as I lived in the neighbouring one for a decent period of time. He is actually, Mr. Hollowbone, a very, very good champion of his area. He is completely out of sync with his constituents on this particular matter, a 56% Leave seat, and the area we were canvassing might well have a different view to him on this point, of course.
Tom Ray, I thank him for the way, and it's with some satisfaction that I note that his visit did not deliver the results for the Conservative Party in Carshot and Wallington that he'd hoped. But I would point out to him that the latest polling actually suggests that my constituency it would now vote to remain if a vote took place. And he may also be aware that apparently now in every single constituency in the country, there is a majority of people who are actually in favour of a people's vote.
Polling. My word. Thank God the polls are always correct. Eh? I just wonder if there was a people's vote in his constituency to who should be the Member of Parliament based on this particular issue, how well he'd fare. So I would say I'm not convinced this is the way forward. But he did identify, quite correctly, a dilemma that many Labour members of Parliament will have, especially those that represent Midlands and Northern seats, who passionately believe that leaving the European Union is not the correct thing for the country, but represent seats where the vast majority of people who reside in them do. I always enjoy listening to the Honourable Member for East Lothian. He's actually I think he's one of the best orators in the House. He tells the story. He might have mentioned the word betrayal, but we won't go there quite yet, once or twice. But he mentioned it in a completely different way to the problem tweet that we might have inadvertently talked about in this debate. But I know he represents his constituents fairly, and I would say to him, in a way, when I, as a believer that this is the right thing for our country, I do the same for my constituents too. And I did actually meet with the timber trade very recently to talk about their concerns over deal and no deal issues. And forgive me for choosing favourites in this debate so far, but my favourite speech was from the Honourable Member for Wigan, because, yep, you can stick this on your leaflet at the next election. Forgive me for my old friend, but it's not you have not betrayed the people of Wigan. In fact, quite the opposite. If anybody listened to the words that you spoke in this debate, you represented their views faithfully. You did it passionately. You understood there is a real dilemma in what many people who actually sit in seats that voted one way.
Minister, give way.
Of course, it'd be my pleasure.
Minister, I'd prefer you not to quote me without reading it. So I'm going to read it to the Chamber now. Ultimate Brexit fence-sitter Labour's Lisa Nandy is likened to those using the word betrayal, quoting your words back, to the far right. What rubbish. What about when Gina Miller likened us Brexiteers to extremists? Both Conservatives and Labour stood on a manifesto to deliver Brexit. Not to do so is a betrayal. I did not say use betrayal, sir. Minister, please could you retract that?
Both the Honourable Lady and the Minister not keep referring directly to another member in this debate.
Yes, of course.
All members have to go through the chair. Minister.
Okay. Thank you. I apologise if I inadvertently referred to another member incorrectly. But I was talking about the contribution of the Honourable Member for Wigan, and I hope I didn't mean to upset my Honourable friend from Morley and Atwood. I just wanted to make the point that the Honourable Lady, the Member for Wigan, I thought was making the case for both her constituents' views, where she quite rightly, in my experience, I have the same in my constituency, say that views have hardened amongst those that voted to leave the European Union back 2 years ago, but also talked about how she'd gone about campaigning in the referendum. So I didn't see that at all. And and made some very wise comments on democracy. I mean, we did have the largest democratic turnout in our entire history in the referendum, with 33.5 million voters turning out to vote. And to my mind, when a decision of constitutional significance is made, it is paramount that correct processes are followed. And the ballot paper did give us all, present us all with a clear-cut choice and put forward a very, very simple question. Should the United Kingdom remain a member of the European Union or leave the European Union? She too will probably remember Pencilgate in the referendum. People on all sides of the debate were very passionate about how they were going to vote, and people on the leave side of the debate were worried that using the pencil in ballot boxes, that pencil would be rubbed out by some sort of government authority at the time. It wasn't. The vote was won, and the government is delivering Brexit.